the new me coming out. And I just wanna live, and I just gotta give. I'm completely positive. I think this time around I am gonna do it like you never knew it. Oh, I'll make it through. The time has come for me to break out of my shell. I have to shout that I am coming out. I'm coming out. Come on. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. Come on. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming out. Coming. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming out. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I've got to show the world all that I want to be, all my abilities. There's so much more to me. Somehow I'll have to make it. Just understand, I got it well in hand. Know how I plan. I'm spreading love. There is no need to fear. And I just feel so good every time I hear I'm coming out. Oh yeah, the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming out. I'm coming out. Woo! I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it
What God has given us, whether we are aware of it or not, are so many faith traditions with so many opportunities to practice connection with something greater than ourselves. We at the center really admonish, but that may be too strong a word, encourage people to do something to connect with what they would call their idea of God, their understanding of God. We don't tell you what to do or how to do it, but we do say, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea. Use one of them or put them together. You know, a few years ago, fusion restaurants with Asian fusion ideas were emerging, and I realized that we're sort of a religious fusion kind of center. We'll just take some things and see what it's like if you put it together. We were doing mala beads on the trip, and the idea for mala beads came from Hinduism, and you say a chant of some sort 108 times, and we started out with Om Shanti, and then we changed it to praise God, and God is, and I am, and all sorts of other wonderful things, fusing things together, whatever it takes for us to have a practice that allows us to sink into the remembrance that we are greater than we think we are, and that we are connected with everything else. That's what a spiritual practice does. Well, today I want to talk about another type of spiritual practice. This comes from the Toltec tradition, which is the mysticism of Mexico. And because church can be boring, I thought I'd just mix it up a bit. So in honor of Pride Day, I thought we'd just have some fun with the 4 agreements. And for those of you that have taken self-mastery, this will be like a review. For those of you that haven't taken self-mastery or read the book, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, this will be totally new. But I think you're going to pay attention in ways you hadn't done before, because I've decided to ask some queens to help me out. They were probably once kings, but they're now queens, and it's just going to be lovely. So the first queen that I would like to introduce to you is the Queen of Honesty. The Queen of Honesty is Miss Impeccability. Can we hear it for Miss Impeccability? Miss Impeccability, tell me about what you represent.
If I was being impeccable with my word, I would say what I mean what I say, and do it with integrity. And that means no gossiping, and don't step on your own feelings. And above all else, don't be shady, be a lady.
Okay. So if this was going to be a contest, she would get it on legs and walk. Oh, not 3 out. Oh, really? Hair too? Oh, geez. Oh, wow. Yep. Okay. It's an amazing thing. Miss Honesty, Miss Impeccability. It's good. It's good. So what this means, according to Don Miguel Ruiz, is that we need to be impeccable with our word. We need to speak with integrity, say only what we mean, avoid using the word to speak against ourselves or to gossip about others. Use your power of your word in the direction of truth and love. That's what he would say that's all about. The way that I want to back up just a bit, because this could just be a habit, which is just pretty, it's like emotional spiritual maturity. It's like grow up and stop dissing things. I could say it that way. But here's the underlying truth with all of this, is that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word is holy. The Word is powerful. And so we start to use it with respect. Our word has power, but it has power if we value it. If we're just throwing words around, there's no power in it. I was deeply influenced by a gentleman called Brother Tete. And he's from Ghana, and he said to really understand the power of his word, he decided to give himself very few words. So he gave himself 3 words a day, 3 words a day for a year. And he said, you know what? If I only give myself 3 words, I'm really going to think about the words that I'm going to spend. I'm not going to spend them foolishly. And out of that, he realized the power of that word. He was respectful of his word. He was respectful of what he would say, because there is power in that. How many of you have ever felt disempowered by someone else's word? How many of you know that you've done the same thing? We would not do that if we're impeccable. Impeccable means without sin. It means whole and integrous. So when we start to really think about what we're going to say and not just throw things out there, then what happens is that we start to value our ability to be creative, and we start to trust ourselves. When we start to keep our commitments, if we have to renegotiate, we renegotiate, but we keep our commitments, we keep our vows, we do what we say we're going to do, we begin to trust ourselves, and if we trust ourselves, we can start to trust God, because if we don't trust God, look back, we don't trust ourselves. Know thyself. If you want to have worth, greater self-worth, value your word. It's all wrapped up together. Don Miguel Ruiz says that if we just kept this agreement, we would go from hell to heaven. There would be no hell in our experience because we would always be creating that which we wanted to have by speaking it into existence. How many of you have conversations that you really don't want to live in the middle of? Then we need to stop having those conversations. Just have a new conversation. Impeccable. Be impeccable with our word. And then we become the queen of honesty. And maybe we'll all grow long legs if we ever wanted those. Honestly, if that happened, I... The next queen that I'd like you to meet is the great queen of happiness, and she is Ms. It's Not Personal. I really like those red shoes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Tell us a little bit about not taking it personally.
I don't like to take things personally because it makes me suffer. I'm not a sufferer. I'm a suffragette.
Oh, woo! Oh, man. Okay, so this particular agreement can set you free from the actions, the words, and the perception of others. Freedom can happen when you don't take things personally. We're all growing and evolving, and sometimes everyone has a little unskilled behavior. And sometimes you grow and evolve and you realize you could have done it better, but in the meantime, you just got some unskilled behavior. And so do others. People are doing the best they can, and sometimes what people do and say and how they behave can seem hurtful. But the hurt is an opportunity for us to realize that we're taking things more personally than we need to, because whatever someone does or says has everything to do with them, and how we react has everything to do with us. And man, that's easy to get when you're sitting there and you just saw somebody in beautiful red high heels. It's harder to get when someone says something to you and you go, ooh? Or, ah, oh, when our buttons have been pushed. This is for those of you that want to take this challenge, if you want to go just a little bit deeper and have this work you in a greater way. When we allow the actions of someone else to affect us deeply, as they say in a 12-step program, if it's hysterical, it's historical. So if that hurt deeply, then realize that there's some wound there that is calling us to heal. That hurt is an opportunity to go deep inside ourselves and say, what am I telling myself? What am I telling myself? This happened, but what am I telling myself? What am I telling myself? I'm telling myself they don't like me. I'm telling myself that I'm not worthy to be liked. I'm telling myself that no one will ever like me. How many have gone that far? And that's that beautiful imagination that we've got. We can't change how other people behave, but we can certainly change what we tell ourselves. And eventually we discover that we don't have to say those things to ourselves, and pretty soon people will behave the way they behave, and we're much less affected. One of the things I've said before, and I try to remember it for myself all the time, and that is, I may have pushed your button, but I did not install it. Someone may push your button that they didn't install it. You're the one that gets to remove that button. And that looks like not taking things personally. But boy, the freedom that can come when you say, you know, it's not about them, it's about me, so what do I need to heal in me? It's not about them, it's about me. What do I need to heal in me? And they've got their own life. They've got their own stuff going on. God, and you bless them and love them, but you can't do that if you're taking it personally. The next queen that I'd like to introduce to you is the queen of good communication. How many of you would love better communication? Then I want you to meet Miss No Assumptions. Oh, please take pictures. Just take a lot of pictures. Tell us about not making assumptions.
I speak clearly, and I avoid drama and sadness because I speak clearly.
Well, there it is. How much easier can it get? And I love the hair, by the way. Our congregation is the best congregation. I'll tell you what they will do to get the message across. It is so wonderful. I'm so grateful. All of us have attended and graduated with degrees from MSU, which is make stuff up. Because that's what's normal. What's normal in the brain, the way the brain functions, is if it has this fact and this fact, but it doesn't have these facts, it'll just make them up. Because that's what the brain does. It needs to connect things. And if they're not connected, it will make up a connection. That's what they'll do. If there's a gap, it will be filled. And that usually causes assumptions. And it can be for good or not so good. I've watched people continue to buy stocks that were supposedly, if you read about them, worthless, with the assumption that if they're going up, they will continue to go up. How many of you remember the .com bust? So sometimes the assumptions are like, oh, it's going to be good. And then sometimes the assumptions are, oh, it's awful. I mean, I can't believe it. This is going to affect this, and then there'll be this, and then there'll be this, and then there'll be this, and now I'm worried, and it's all an assumption. So what do you do to connect the dots? If you make an agreement to not assume anything, it will force you to communicate. It will force you to ask questions. It's always better to ask questions than to make assumptions, because assumptions set us up for suffering, because there's also a tendency in the brain that given two choices, good and not so good, the brain chooses not so good 4 out of 5 times. It's a proven fact. A person looks at you a certain way, there's a tendency to assume that it was not a good way. How many of you know, not you, but know others that have a tendency to assume the worst? It's just the way the brain functions. But if we make an agreement to not assume, we have to ask. We have to say, wow, you said this. Did you mean this? Because that's what I'm making up. I will actually have conversations like that. This is what I'm making up. When you did this, this is what I'm making up. I own my stuff. I'm not saying you did this, but this is what I'm making up. Tell me what's really going on. It's a much better conversation. And Conversation is communion, and communion reveals union, which reveals love, and that's what we all want. What we really want is love. In fact, what we really want is to express love and experience love, because love just is, but that's what we want, and it only happens when we communicate. And we can't communicate from the assumption, like, explain yourself. How many of you have ever been on the receiving end of that? But to ask questions, to come at it like, wow, I want a realization of the connection that I know is there, but we don't seem to be having it because I'm making an assumption. I want reality. I want to connect with you. And what's keeping me from connecting with you is the belief that I'm making up there's something off. We can't do that if we start to allow ourselves to communicate. And I'm talking to you, but I'm also just putting it out into the world. I'm putting it out into the world. Into the world. Because I'm old. Which means I've been around for a few decades. And I have never seen the world so divided. I've never seen it so divided. I'm like amazed that we just become more and more and more and more polarized. And this group assumes that group is thinking this and it's not good. And this group is thinking that group is thinking that and it's not good. And I don't hear conversations. I hear accusations. Well, if it's happening in this world, it's happening in this world. Because this world exists because of this world. I create my world. We create our world. So who are we assuming is doing something they shouldn't be doing? Instead of asking, why in the world are you doing that? What? I became very brave and asked someone who has a different political opinion than my own. I just took a big gulp of wine and and I said, tell me why people vote this way. I was on a particular issue. And he explained something that I hadn't even thought about. Like, oh, well, from that point of view, I'm not sure that point of view is true, but I understand that if that point of view is being held, I can see why they would do that. I'm much less polarized. Are we talking to each other? What could be accomplished if we did talk to each other? So I want to share a story with you about talking to each other. And this was actually on my Facebook page. I want to share it with you. I read this story and liked it so much, and I have readers over there. Would you bring them to me? Oh, Matt's not there.
There's the right one.
They'll work. Thank you. This is kind of small, but I want to read this story to you. It's about people with opposing views coming together. And how many of you have heard of U2? Right, good. And Bono is the lead, right? Okay. At U2 concerts in the early 90s, a regular part of the show featured criticism of George H.W. Bush. In fact, frontman Bono used to call the White House in the middle of the concert to try to get a chance to speak to the 41st president. When George H.W. Bush's son, George W. Bush, became president in 2001, Bono was also critical of his presidency. George W. Bush didn't go to war with the critic of himself and his father. Instead, he invited him to talk about something they had in common, a common passion, which was to save lives in Africa. They had lunch together in the White House mess hall. Then Bush took him to the Oval Office, and for 40 minutes they discussed AIDS, malaria, and debt relief. After the meeting in 2003, Bush started a program in Africa known as PEPFAR, which 14 years later is credited with saving over 11 million lives in Africa. Yesterday, Bono, I'm sorry, Anyway, some of you really care. Okay. Bono was in Texas as part of his current U2 tour and paid a visit to his old friend, George W. Bush. What if we stopped having assumptions except for one? And that assumption is we're all children of the universe and doing the best we can. And if we talked together, we would find something that we had in common. What if we made that assumption? Spiritual growth depends upon progress, so I want to introduce to you the queen of progress, Miss Bestie. Oh, Miss Best, would you please tell us how we can do our best?
I'd love to. You see, I believe in always doing your best. And one way to do that, because it's going to change from moment to moment, okay? You could be sick or not feeling well, but you want to do your absolute best. And when you do, you avoid self-judgment, criticism, and all that abuse that can happen. Let me tell you something, girl, get over that. But that's the way to do it. Can you imagine if everyone here would just always do their best? It would be a beautiful world.
You are something. Oh my. We will progress in any way that we want to progress. For instance, we'll be able to take things less personally. We'll be able to be more impeccable with our word. We will make many less assumptions and all those other things that we want to do. We'll be able to hike the Inca Trail. We will be able to do anything that we set our mind to if we just allow ourselves to do our best. Because it's true that we will not do things perfectly. In fact, the thing I try to say to myself often is anything worth doing is worth doing badly. Because most likely, if it's the first or second or third or 10th time I've done it, it might be bad. But is it good enough to continue? And you do your best in what you're doing, even if it doesn't seem like you're getting very far. That's one way of looking at it. You'll always do better and better and better. It's constant, never-ending improvement. And to realize that we don't have to do things well if we still love to do it. Because there's lots of things that we don't do well. How many of you know there's lots of things you don't do well? But they're still fun. And in doing your best, what happens is that best comes alive. It becomes living in you. You don't have to go through the day hoping for the day, whatever activity is, to end. You don't have to hope for the weekend. You don't have to hope for the vacation. If you're doing your best, you're inserting your life force into what you're doing, and the life force comes back to you. It is the remedy of boredom. It's the remedy of just putting up with anything. It feeds you when you're doing your best, no matter how well that is. And it may not be very well, but it's your best. I want to share with you some of the best wisdom I ever got. And I paid a lot of money for it and sat through a long session, and that was in the S training. Who else did the S training? There's always just a few people that did the S training. God bless the S training. It actually was the mother of all trainings. Everything else is boring compared to the S training. I mean, really boring. I mean, there's something about being in a room with your eyes closed and listening to people throw up in the room that really heightens the sense of awareness. So we go through all of this, and then the whole idea is for you to get it. And I keep waiting. Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, I need to get it. And then finally they tell you what you're supposed to get. And that's this. You're not okay. You're just not okay. But when you get you're not okay, you're okay. Get it? I just saved you a lot of money. And 12 hours at a time, not going to the bathroom. But when you know you're okay, then you can just do your best because you're not trying to prove anything. You can do your best because you're not trying to achieve anything. You're not trying to acquire anything. You're just doing your best. To make that an agreement that I'm going to show up and I'm going to do my best. You know what? I'm going to be a parent and I'm going to wish some days that I didn't say that to my child. But tomorrow I'm going to do my best. I'm going to be the best spouse that I can be, and there are going to be times that I really think I should have been more understanding and more considerate, but tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do my best. I'm going to be the best citizen I can be. I'm going to be the best partner I can be. I'm going to be the best friend I can be, and there will be times when I'm not, but I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to do my best. And that intention feeds the soul. And when the soul is satisfied, life becomes satisfying. Life does not feed us. We feed life, and it comes back to us. Too many people are looking for life to do something for them. No, we do something to life, and it comes back to us. We do our best. One of the things that I said was, it's all about love, and it really is. I'm just so aware that it's all about love. We long to connect, and when we are not impeccable with our word, when we don't keep our agreements, and we don't say what's powerful, when we let our words dissipate all over the place in gossip and idle chatter, where we cut ourselves off from the experience of love. When we make assumptions, we separate ourselves from others. All of this happens, and yet what we've always wanted was love. And so Don Miguel Ruiz gave us a prayer, and I'd like you to pull it out. I think you got it when you came in. Everybody have one? Okay. Oh, I love our ushers. They are so considerate. Oh, man. We need a lot. Well, then read it up here, and then we'll make more, and we'll get more later. Okay, so you can read it up here. And I'd like for those of you that will join me to just take a stand for something. And so if you want to, I'd like for you to stand up, because it's more powerful when the body is engaged. So I'd like you to not only read and just have your mouth move. I would like for this to be a powerful statement of being impeccable with your word, having it be full of integrity. And so let's begin. Thank you, Creator of the universe, for the gift of life you have given me. Thank you for giving me everything that I've ever needed. Thank you for the opportunity to experience this beautiful body and this wonderful mind. Thank you for living inside of me with all of your love, your pureness, and boundless spirit. Your warmth and light. Thank you. Thank you for using my words, for using my eyes, for using my heart to share your love wherever I go. Thank you just the way you are. I love you just the way you are. And because I am your creation, I love myself just the way I am. Help me to keep the love and the peace in my heart and to make that love a new way of life, that I may live in love the rest of my life. And now let's say it together. Amen. And so it is.